think yours is okay. Wonderful. Hello, everybody. We are so excited to be with you today. Over the past couple weeks, we've had a busy couple of weeks at Child Life on Call. We recently announced the new name of our podcast, which is now Inside the Children's Hospital. And this is our first live recording of the podcast, which is really neat. And so we have wonderful people joining us today. So happy to have you all. There's no pressure here for any of the guests or even myself to have this all figured out. And as we know, this conversation about tube feeding can go in a lot of different directions. But most importantly, we're here to talk about the people, the families, the patients, the caregivers themselves who are shaped by tube feeding in so many different ways and often can feel unseen or misunderstood. So, whether you're a parent or a healthcare professional who's joining us, there's going to be something for you to take away. Um, I'm honored to be joined by an incredible group of guests who bring both lived experience and professional insight. We have Kelsey Ward, who is a parent advocate and medical parent whose daughter has been tube fed since birth. We're also joined by Brady Crandall. He is the founder of Youth Crews and a parent advocate whose daughter was born with HIE. We're grateful to have Alexa Quintero with us, the patient advocate at Connective Wellness and a young adult navigating life with feeding tubes herself. And finally, Hillary, and I'm going to say your last name incorrectly, but Giernick, a registered dietitian, a pediatric dietitian who supports families seeking flexible, real food approaches to tube feeding. Thank you so much for being here and being willing to share your perspectives so openly in this forum. The goal today is to really center stories on the lived experience of tube feeding. And I'm sure we will dispel some common myths. And my hope is that we highlight what meaningful support actually looks like day to day. And our goal is for parents to feel less alone and more equipped, and to ensure that professionals like myself listen more deeply. And we really just want everyone to walk away with a greater understanding of compassion and hope for the future. So, we'll begin by talking about the early days and what tube feeding looked like in your mind at the beginning and how that has changed over time. So, I would love to just throw it out there to anyone who's willing to take the first bite. Hey, Kelsey, welcome back. We always
Hey,
look a little live in and out, but I think you're good to go now. So I
can
was
can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, I don't know why, but I can't mute anymore.
Oh no, that's okay. I don't hear any
Okay,
feedback on your end.
okay, if you have any issues, let me know. Sorry. It keeps
Okay,
just saying
perfect. No,
like I have a
you're
pop-up that says you aren't being recorded, and then I can't press anything on my screen, so it won't let me mute. But as long as you can hear me, it's fine, I guess.
I can hear you just
Okay,
perfectly. Can you hear me?
perfect. Yeah, I can hear you fine. Sorry about that.
No, no apologies necessary. I was just saying, like, all goes here. We're
Yes.
easy.
Okay, sounds good.
But I was just kind of throwing out the first question and beginning about the early days and what tube feeding looked like in your mind versus what actually happened when you started either tube feeding your child or getting tube feeds yourself, or what that looked like, and just passing the question out to all of you.
Yeah, so I feel like there's truly like no sugarcoating that the fact that being a caregiver is hard, whether you're on day one or on year five. It's stressful, it's overwhelming between coordinating medical supply deliveries, doctor's appointments, medications, feed schedules, not to mention the pump going off all hours of the night. I could go on and on, but I think for me at least, I feel like my perspective changed. I think in the very beginning days, I was just on such information overload. I feel like when you become a mom or a dad, it's never like in the back of your mind that you're also going to become a nurse. So all of a sudden, your house looks like a hospital threw up all over it, and it's just like completely overwhelming. But I think the more you do it, and the more I did it, the more comfortable I got doing it, and it became our version of normal. All that to say is that it's still a heavy role to carry, but it does get easier, and I feel like you do get stronger.
Thanks, Kelsey. Brady, I'll hand it off to you.
Yeah, I was just doing the math in my head because our daughter was born in 2020, and I think she got her G-tube surgery like 5 years ago, like this week, like yesterday, today, tomorrow. So, um, it's been really, it's honestly, it's just totally normal for us at this point. But then I was thinking back about to when our daughter was born. She was born with a severe HIE brain injury, and I remember, um, when your kid is that little, like a newborn, that no one really knows like what your kid is going to be like, and so you sort of have this hope of like, oh, maybe they'll just be like, um, one of the kids that'll have like a slight limp or some like minor thing. Um, and in the back of your head, there's always these like scary things like, oh, they might need a G tube. And for some reason, I thought that was like really scary. And our daughter, she actually started losing quite a bit of weight, because she just couldn't, right when she hit about 4 months old, her um, kind of suck swallow reflex started to go away. And typically, other kids, it sounds like their brain takes over, but our daughters didn't, and so she just kind of lost the ability to use a bottle, and it was unbelievably stressful. Like when your 4-month-old baby is losing weight and like not getting nutrients. Um, and I remember we were admitted to the hospital on January 1st, 2021, and um, it was so scary and so hard, but in hindsight, it was like the best admission ever. We got so many answers to the things we were stressed about. She got her G tube surgery, and like since then, eating has been like no stress at all. And it's so nice to be able to give meds and know that she's getting water and nutrients. If she's sick, we can just give her a bolus feed of water, and like, since then we've had two other kids that aren't disabled, and it's really stressful when they're sick because they don't eat or drink anything. So, um, I just think G tubes are the best thing ever. I know that like our daughter's she's able to take a bolus and she doesn't have continuous feeds and she doesn't have a J tube. So there's a lot of like easy things we have, but so I'm not trying to say it's easy for everyone, but it's just been wonderful for us.
That's a really interesting perspective. And I saw that a lot when I worked in the NICU. It's like the G tube conversation feels so doom and gloom when you just have no idea what to anticipate. And then when you start to connect these parents with other parents who share their stories, they're like, no, this is the best decision. It's helped our family in so many ways, although overwhelming. It's one of the bigger, I think, misconceptions about what life with a G tube could look like. Alexa, you have such an interesting perspective. Would you want to share?
So, unlike you guys, I was 18. I was turning 18. I was my sophomore year of college when I got hit with my first NG tube. Actually, to your point about the date, it was January 1st of 2022. So I think I'm going on like 4 years at this point. And I was really like emaciated. I was actively dying. I was in college trying very hard not to let everything kind of like crash. We didn't have any answers. People were telling me it was all in my head, like all of these different things that by the time I got admitted to the hospital, I don't remember the first couple of days. I was that far down the road of like no longer being here that I don't really remember much of it, but I do remember kind of a lack of education. And so I like leaned into TikTok because there were people who had been doing this for years online. And I was like, okay, well, if like the hospital doesn't know, I need to find somewhere else to know. And I remember actually I had come across Kelsey's page really, really early on, and I had seen some of her videos and just kind of seeing that her little girl was okay, like Scarlett was okay. Like I had a lot of hope in that. So I was like, I'm 18, I'm in college. This is gonna be really weird. I'm gonna have to go to school with the tube on my face. And I did for a year and a half. I went to school with like a feeding tube taped to my face. It was actually the semester right before I went back, we still had to wear masks, thankfully. Like, not that I had any shame with my tube, but it was a lot less questions for me to have the mask on. But to your point about the pump going off in all hours of the day, I would have pump go off in the middle of class. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh God, I'm beeping. And then everyone's concerned because it's not a like comforting sound. And when you don't know what's going on, like people, like they're looking around, they're like, oh my God, what's happening? Like, is everything okay? And so it was kind of this big thing where I was trying to figure out my new normal. I was also trying not to alarm my teachers or my friends in the classroom. And then I was trying to figure out answers to things that I thought I would get in the hospital that they just didn't have knowledge about. And I was admitted to a children's hospital too, so I kind of wish there had been more education. But I think because I was on the upper age, they just kind of assumed I could get it and I was good to go. And so I think that although I wasn't like a baby or a newborn or as a parent, I almost kind of felt like all of a sudden we were going home with a newborn baby, all these new tubes and things, and we didn't know how to do any of them, and everyone was trying to figure it out. And then you add in like the social features. It was not super fun, but it saved my life, and I'm grateful for that. And I was able to stay in school and graduate. So
I love that you were able to find my page, and I'm sure tons of others. That's kind of really how we learned, kind of like what you were saying, is you leave the hospital and you're like, oh, wait, now I have to do all of this by myself.
yeah,
And social media was really kind of one of the things that we started looking on for tips and tricks. And we found a lot of comfort in what we found. But that's why we started sharing our journey to not only raise awareness, but to help even just other families going through a similar journey, and share our tips and tricks, because that's exactly how we learn too.
yeah, I think it was because of you and a couple other people that I actually had a flying squirrel delivered to my hospital room. So I
I
left the hospital with one because I was not going home without it.
love that.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool. And you two are meeting face to face for the first time today.
Yes, yes, it's very exciting.
That's amazing. Hillary, I want to invite you into the conversation, and you bring so much of obviously the dietitian perspective and nutritional value of tube feeding. And we've had you on the podcast before, so I don't want to spoil it, but tell me about like where you meet families at the beginning of their tube feeding journey and what they think they're allowed to do versus kind of some of the experiences you see them grow through as they learn how to tube feed with whole foods.
Yeah, so I could echo a lot of what you said, where like Kelsey's like it's an information overload at the beginning, and there's also a lack of education. So it's so hard because you don't want to bombard families with too much. But I think in doing that, that we don't teach them what they really need to know and the stuff that's like the real life practical things that are going to help you at home. Because you're told that you have to do this formula, this is the feeding plan that you're going to follow, and you have no idea that there's other options. There's other equipment out there, and there's more feeding options for you. And so I understand not wanting to information overload, but I think that there's such a lack of good follow up, and or maybe you do see your clinician often, but there's so much else going on that this takes a back seat. And so you might not bring up these questions that you have, and you don't really know what you don't know. So you're getting by with equipment that doesn't really work that well for you, or a feeding plan that doesn't fit your schedule very often, but you don't really know if there's other options for you. And I think that's where, as clinicians, we don't always do the best job, and why I'm so thankful for social media and these online groups, because I truly think people learn more from each other and parents than they do from clinicians. I know I do. As a clinician, I learn way more from you all. So thank you, Kelsey, for posting all that stuff. It is so
Yes,
helpful.
of course.
But in my area where I help people use real food if they want to, there's just so many families that aren't aware that it's even an option. And so they might have gone down this road of years of trying so many different formulas and so many different medications and so many different feeding plans. And then they get in a group that someone shares like, well, I blend some of the food for my child, or I use a real food formula and it's made a huge difference for me. And so the parent tries that and it's like a game changer. And they think, why didn't I hear about this sooner? Because doctors either don't even know it's an option, or that's a whole nother can of worms. Sometimes it's just not always accepted. But I think that's where we could do better as clinicians, is giving families all the options and empowering them with knowledge so that they can make the choice that's best for them.
I feel like, to your point, Hillary, the one coherent part of this hospital stay was they wanted to put me on Boost something. I don't remember at the time. And the one piece of research I had done beforehand was formulas, because I do have a lot of food allergies. And so I looked at them, I was like, can we try Kate Farms? And they were like, well, we want to put you on Boost. And I was like, okay, why? And no one could really give me an answer as to why. And I was like, is there anything wrong with trying Kate Farms? And it was one of those things where if I had not done that random research like a couple of weeks prior and said, hey, I don't want to do this, I want to do the Kate Farms, I would have been sent home with Boost and I would not have known at all.
Mhm.
I know so many friends who have since gone home with a formula and they didn't even realize that there were other options out there. And they would get home, realize that maybe it wasn't the best for them, and they would have to go through the process of switching outpatient, which is a lot harder.
Yeah, it's so hard. And then, like if you're a formula company, you know, you use not a formula company, the DME, you know, if they only have this specific list of products for you, you think that's your limit, but you're not told that you can actually switch a company and you can, there's just so many more avenues and paths. And I don't think that parents even know who to contact at first. Like I can't tell you how many times a parent was like, I don't have the right supplies. I don't know who to call. I was like, they didn't tell you like who you're supposed to call for your supplies. This is like your child's food, you know? So I wish that part was better, and I don't really know how to make it better because it's a whole can of worms, but I don't know. Our system's too
Yeah.
busy. It's bad.
We've experienced that firsthand with Scarlett. She's had an NG, a G tube. She's now on a GJ tube. And every little season of our tube feeding journey, she's been on obviously multiple different formulas. And then in the very beginning, we ran into that exact issue where we didn't know that we had different options. And then our DME would be like, well, we don't have that formula, so you can't go on it. Or they'd be like, well, your insurance doesn't cover that one, but it does cover this one. So it's definitely a new world of like learning how to advocate for either yourself or your child of like, hey, this is the formula that I want to be on. These are the ingredients that I want. But again, you don't know that you have those options until you talk with somebody. And then, of course, you don't know who to talk to. And sometimes it takes how many hours just to get through to somebody with your DME. It's a whole process. So I totally
Yeah.
get the frustrations.
Yeah, hours you don't have. I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly.
supply companies and dealing with insurance and those like adulting things, like on top of it, it's just a lot. So
Yeah.
Yeah, very stressful.
It was
We had
kind of
to
hard for me too, like uniquely, because like when you're an adult, like you get to pick what kind of food you eat. You have that level of free will. And for me to then have to be fighting with doctors and insurance to cover the food that I like was going to be best for my body. And I'm sure you guys, like you have the free will to feed your children what you want to normally. And then you're fighting with insurance and DME to try to get a food that you feel is appropriate for your kid. And they're like, no. And you're like, well, I'm the parent. Like I see them every day. I'm sure that's difficult. And it was definitely difficult for me.
Yeah. It's funny because when we were leaving the hospital, um, I don't remember who at the hospital. They basically just give you a list of the DMEs to contact, and you're like, "Well, who should I use?" And they're like, "Well, we can't recommend anybody." So my wife and I basically just like did this and picked like a super big national DME, and we worked with them for like a couple months. Then we realized it was not a great experience, and then we learned from everyone here in Colorado that tons of families use a regional DME called Tender Care, and it was like completely night and day and like unbelievable. And so that's my advice to new families is always to try to figure out if there's like a regional DME in their area that can help support them because um, a lot of the smaller regional DMEs can be a lot more flexible with products they order, and you can usually get a hold of someone, a real life human. So that's my pro tip that we've learned.
I would love to get into some of like the nitty gritty tips and tricks of like, let's start with a G tube experience. So when it pops out and you need to go to the ER, what are some of the things you've learned along the way? And then Alexa, I want to hear about your NG tube experience and tricks for getting it back in. And then Kelsey or Hillary, I would love to hear from you, maybe some blending tips and tricks that people may not know about when it comes. So whoever wants to start, please go ahead.
So I've kind of had the experience with all three. Scarlett has had an NG tube, a G tube, and a GJ tube. And then she's actually even been on TPN. She had a PICC line for a little bit as well. Thankfully, that was just temporary. I can say out of all three of them, we have preferred the G tube out of all of them. The NG tube was a nightmare getting back in. She was a baby when she had it, so she would constantly pull it out. Obviously, she's a baby. She doesn't know. She feels something in her nose. She wants it out. She pulls it out. We were trained to put that in at home, but it was a nightmare. I mean, it was painful for her. It was frustrating. And we were so glad when we made the switch from the NG tube to the G tube. The G tube we were trained to put in at home. We changed it every 3 months. If something did happen, the balloon popped or it came out for some reason, We just popped a new one in. It wasn't a big deal. It was very quick. For her, it wasn't painful. It took about 2 minutes to take the old one out, put the new one in. GJ is a little bit more tricky. That's what she has now. That one goes all the way into her intestines. So if it does come out, we have to make the drive all the way to Hopkins. And she goes under anesthesia to have her GJ put back in. So we don't love that one, but that's what she needs right now. And we just plan to, if it does come out, we put a G tube in temporarily just to keep her stoma open until we get to Hopkins to put in a new GJ under anesthesia.
Fun fact, in the adult world, they frown upon having a G tube at home in case your GJ comes out. I was actually shocked. Yep. The first time that happened to me, with my adult hospital, I went in and I was like, yeah, my GJ tube came out. So I put a G button in because I have it because I was at Children's. And they were like, why do you have that? Who'd you get that from? How do you do that? And I was like, Boston Children's Hospital. And they were like, yeah, well, they're not even the best anymore anyway. You shouldn't do that. And I was like, do you want me to just come in with like a hole that's closing?
Oh, wow. See, so we have a 2.5 hour drive. So
Yeah.
they gave us that just to keep the stoma open so she wouldn't have to have
Exactly.
surgery, obviously, if it started closing.
Yeah.
But
And
that's
mine had fallen
crazy.
out in New York, by the way, and I had to make it back to
Oh,
Boston.
wow.
So it was interesting. But
It's interesting the different advice you get from just different hospitals, different places.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and even hospital Children's refuses to do any sort of like sedation or pain control with their tube changes. So be it an NG, an NJ, a GJ, all of it is done without any sort of like anesthesia or numbing or anything, and they keep that as a policy from like age 0 to 50 is what they say. So I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that there should be pain management involved, especially in procedures like the GJ or if you're younger. But it is super interesting to see the difference in all the hospitals. Yeah, to the point of the NG, I had the worst luck with the NG tube. It would get pulled or it would like break or the little pieces would like pop off, or I had the end piece where like you could do the feed in the med that would come off all the time with the old tubes. And so I would be in clinic getting it changed like every other week or every few weeks or something. Luckily, I was a really good drop, so I didn't really have a lot of it. I thought I would. I thought I was gonna like freak out every single time, only be able to do it under anesthesia, but I actually was pretty good at getting it done. So I was the exception to the rule. I could come in at 4 p.m. if I needed to avoid having to go to the ER because they knew I was going to be so quick in clinic. And I did that for about a year. And then I studied in LA for a semester, and there was no more clinic like that. So I had to learn how to place it myself. And I got really good at doing that. And then eventually I got swapped to the NJ. And then from there, I went to a GJ tube, and then eventually had to get them separated because my GJ kept flipping back. It was not staying where it should have been. And the GJ tube has been my biggest gripe. I don't know if any of you have done the AMT GJ tube. I adore that tube for everything, but the G extensions love to snap off. So the little piece that holds the anti-reflux valve open stays in, and any liquid or anything in your stomach just comes out because there's nothing holding it like kind of closed. And the only way to get it out is like to use like tweezers or find some way to get the piece out and pull up. So I keep tweezers in my car, in my glove box, downstairs, everywhere because they break so often. Yeah, that's kind of my tip for people. Like, not medical advice, don't pop your tube, but tweezers help.
You're reminding me of when we tell someone that they have like good veins and they're like, thanks. And it's like, you're a good drop.
Yeah, no, literally. I got compliments. There was one ER nurse who could not believe it. She's like, but you didn't cry or scream or gag. I was like, were you expecting me to? Like, I'm sorry. I didn't put on a show.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. What about you?
Learn that. You unlearn that really quickly, though. I cannot place an NG tube on myself the way I could, even like a month after I'd gotten my surgical. It's, skill very quickly unlearned.
Yes. Brady, how about you? Any tube feeding, like, I don't want to say horror stories, but just forgot to put the top back on, or anything that you found like, and this is what I equate it to, is like when your son is gonna pee, and so you put the diaper over his penis so that you don't get peed on. Any tips like that? And you're on mute. Sorry.
I've pulled it out a ton of times. I'm the only one who's ever pulled it out in my family for some reason. our daughter only has a G tube, so it's been no big deal at all. Um, there was one night where I accidentally pulled it out and I didn't realize it, and I did the feed and everything, and it went all over her. And then I woke up in the morning and there was like food everywhere, dried, and her stoma started to close a little bit. So, but we just then put a catheter in there, which is what our children's hospital told us to use, and then took her to the hospital. But she didn't even need the surgery. They just kind of like were able to like poke it through a little bit easier than I was willing to do. But I don't have any crazy stories. I think the only thing I haven't been able to relate to is our daughter got her G tube about 5 years ago, and at that point we've only known the NFIT system. But I always hear people complain about the transition to NFIT, but that's all I've ever known. And so it's like an inside joke that I feel like I don't understand because people feel so strongly about it. Um, but yeah, I like changing it. It's like no big deal to me. I don't know why. Um, yeah, I guess that's maybe one not piece of advice, but thing we've learned is like our daughter will probably never eat by my mouth, and that's wonderful and that's great. But parents who are worried that like their kid might lose skills um, with a G tube or any sort of feeding tube, like they might not be able to eat orally, I think is probably not. Again, I don't. I'm not a dietitian or a doctor, so I please don't quote me. But like a lot of kids can still eat, and the G tube just basically takes away the stress of like, are they getting nutrition? And so eating can kind of be a fun hobby and something that's not stressful. And also like the stoma closes really, really quick. And so literally like it's not a forever thing if you or your kid needs one. It can be just for a time. So it's not like this like life sentence.
Hmm, that's really helpful.
I will say the nasal tube can cause more aversions, but once I switched to a surgical tube, totally fine. Everything you said was true.
Yeah, I imagine that would be, yeah, I would not do well with
Not
like a
super fun.
thing. Yeah.
It causes really bad like ear and like throat pain.
Ugh.
When I got to the end of my journey, it felt like every time I swallowed, I was swallowing like shards of glass. It
Ugh.
was
That
not
sounds
great, but
awful.
I had it way longer than I should have, so that's not the experience for
That
everybody.
sounds awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like
Uh,
that is one of the biggest misconceptions is a lot of people think, oh, if they have a feeding tube, then they can't eat by mouth, which is so far from the truth. I mean, obviously everybody's circumstances are different. Some people can't eat it all by mouth. Some people can eat some by mouth, etc. And I think that is one of the biggest things that we hear at least is, oh, she has a feeding tube, so she can't eat by mouth. And we're like, no, actually, she can eat some by mouth. And again, everybody's story is different. But yeah, that's definitely one of the biggest misconceptions that we hear at least.
Yeah. And for me, my GJ feeding tube being able to drain kind of let me heal my relationship with food because I was allowed to take tastes, whereas before, like everything was so like rigid and controlled. And so I feel like if anything, it helped me eat more by mouth because I knew I was safer and like had a way to do that safely.
Yeah, that is one of the perks of, well, Scarlett has a GJ, so if she does eat too much by mouth, we can drain some of it if she's having a lot of symptoms or something like that, per her doctor. So definitely one of the perks, as well as like you guys were talking about, you can give medications through it and they don't have to taste it. If they're sick, you can know that they're hydrated, etc.
I'm really grateful. I will never have to do a colonoscopy clean out by mouth.
That too.
Hillary, what about you? You know so much about the world of blended tube feeding. Tell us some of the favorite things that you get to teach families.
The one thing I was thinking about, or like the disaster stories you guys were kind of sharing, is so often you know the Y port extension, and you are feeding the food through one port, and if it's a not an infant where it's not screwed on, you don't think about it. You push the food through it. There's so much pressure that it just shoots out the other end. So if you have a Y port extension, that's just like a funnel that you're pushing in. Hold that closed, unless you want to put spaghetti on the ceiling or something. So that was like the thing I was thinking about. But as far as the advice, there's so much I could give because people are in different stages of trying this. So I want to talk to the people who are maybe considering trying some real food. And it doesn't even involve blending. I think something people don't think about is using store-bought purees, or that there's a lot of commercial real food products available. Sometimes the thought of like starting a blending journey and thinking about all the food you're going to have to make and what that looks like and choosing what to blend, and that's just an extra layer that you don't have to start with. So the baby food, if you haven't been to the baby food aisle in a while, it has gotten like crazy what is available as far as like not just a banana puree. Like you can get like a beef with rosemary and butternut squash and potatoes, meal. So just doing a little bit of that to start. I think first it shows you that you can put something else through the feeding tube and it's not going to explode. But also just gives you some confidence, and it feels good to be like, okay, yeah, I gave my child some real food, or, I had some real food. So I think that's a great place to start. And you can just see how it goes and get your feet wet there if you're considering doing it. And then, yeah, the commercial products, there's so many available now. That can be an awesome addition to, or instead of your regular formula, if you do want to try some real food, but you're not totally ready for the blending part.
And related to what Hillary just said, there's a ton of adapters that can hook up to the pouches and go directly into a tube. And that's awesome. Like, yeah, you can put anything down there,
I've also
basically.
seen people DIY pouches and then bring like infinity bags to them and somehow make that so they can connect it directly to their tube.
I know
That's cool.
parents come up with like the best. I wish we didn't have to come up with the craziest jerry-rig stuff to make it work. I wish there was just better equipment out there, but yeah, there's so much that you don't even have to use a syringe if you don't want to, or like you said, you can use the pump but not use the infinity bag, or you can kind of modify that bag to make it work better. So there's so many tips and tricks, and I think just connecting with other families who have been doing this, and there's so many groups out there that are helpful, can be really, really nice.
If I could share one of my favorite tips is I don't know, it depends on which pharmacy you go to and which type of bottle you have, but there are a million different types of adapters that you can put on a medicine bottle so that you don't have to like, that's the most annoying thing for me, is like dosing up the liquid meds every night. So you can reach out to me or search with any of your parenting groups, but like there's a million different adapters for different medicine bottles as well, so that you can easily draw meds with a bunch of different types of syringes. And that makes it way easier.
I'm loving kind of hearing like what the future of tube feeding could look like, because I hear y'all like sprinkling in some hope. So I want to kind of give you, and maybe Brady, you just put the nail on the head, but what's the magic wand you have when it comes to your tube feeding journey? If you could wave a magic wand and make one thing easier or anything like that, does anything come to mind?
I really wish AMT would make their G extensions so they did not snap off into the tube. And I'm not alone in this. Like, I promise, I thought I was crazy for a while, but everyone is having this issue. I don't know, Kelsey, if you guys have had this issue at all, or if she's not connected to the G extension long enough, maybe. Because I know, like, a lot of us, like, I am unfortunately right now on 24/7 drain, so I think that might be part of it. But that, like I can ruin a shirt in seconds once that happens, because there's nothing stopping it from coming out, and you can't just like suck your stomach contents back in. Like, it doesn't work like that, if that makes sense. So I feel like being able to do that, and then in terms of like what's happening now, having the extra G tube is super helpful. I remember I was in New York City for my Wish trip, and my GJ tube right before we were going to go see a musical just like got pulled out completely, like balloon inflated and everything. And so I deflated the balloon, shoved it back in myself, taped it up, and we went downstairs to the show. And I'm calling IR on the phone, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm about to go into a show. Yeah, I know you said I should probably go to the ER, but like it's fine. It's in place. It's not closing. I won't be reachable for 2.5 hours. If you need to call me after that, that's great. But if not, I'll see you when I get home." And they ended up calling me the next day, and I had an appointment the day I came home. But because like I had the tools to deflate the balloon and reinflate it, I was able to continue, with life, keep doing things. And I feel like that's the biggest thing, is not letting our feeding tubes stop us from being able to do the exciting and fun things in life. Because no one wants to go to the ER on their Wish trip. That's not fun.
I love that. Alexa, what show did you see?
It was The Outsiders. It was worth it.
Oh, love. Any other magic wand moments y'all could come up with or ideas?
I have a silly one, but I want a mute button on the infinity pump. I know that you can do mute when done, but 90% of the time, like the feed is like our daughter gets 210 milliliters. Like if the feed is 208 milliliters, then you'll get a warning like saying like no food. Um, and I know that that's probably like a legal thing, but like please. So oftentimes at night for her night feed, we'll just put more formula in than we know will be
Yeah.
needed because at least then we have the alarm muted for like feed when done. And so at least we know that it won't give us like the warning, but like just that I just
I
want a
love
mute button because it's like it's terrifying.
I
It
did.
like
Brady,
goes off and it like jolts me.
could
I
we
did.
make it into like, you know how everybody's phone is not on silent but on vibrate? Could we get a vibrate? Is that like a little less?
I don't know. I
So
just
I
I don't
did a
want
senior design project my last year at BU where I reinvented the feeding pump to address those concerns. Obviously, like it wasn't like full prototype kind of thing, but I had done the business plan for it. I was getting a business degree and I had come to the conclusion where everything is controlled via your phone or your Apple Watch. So all notifications, all pump rates, all alerts go to phone and Apple Watch, and then you would have those settings similar to a Dexcom. It's possible to do. It is possible within the FDA. It's a different classification, but it is possible, and I need someone to do it.
I love that. To piggyback off of that, I can't tell you, Scarlett's room is upstairs, our room is downstairs. I can't tell you how many times I run up and down the stairs in the middle of the night because her pump is going off saying either because there's a kink or saying no food in, no food out. Every alarm possible, it goes off so many times during the night. So yeah, I would love that.
I would
All
also
right.
love to see a bigger syringe, like than 60 mLs, because I feel like that is such a pain, especially with blended food, because you can't pour it in very easily. So you're like drawing it up. It's messy. You have to wipe it off. And I mean, everyone is using at least 2 to 3, like it's just, it's a pain. And I don't know, I've asked the companies why they can't make more. And they said it's too expensive to make the mold to make a bigger syringe, but there's got to be somebody that feels like that's worth the price. Maybe if I'm ever rich someday, I'll make it. But I feel like that could save a lot of headaches too.
You should reach out to Luma Clean Cares. They make 2B products and they're always looking for a new idea.
Ooh, okay, sounds good.
I love it. Let's do Shark Tank. Bring it on.
Yes.
Well, you are all amazing. I want to give you one more opportunity before we close to just share either something with a parent who may be listening to this or a healthcare professional that you've wanted to say before about your feeding experience.
I feel like one of the most important things is to not compare your journey to someone else's journey because every journey is so vastly different. For some people, tube feeding is a season, and for some people, it's for life. I think another thing, a quote that has stuck with me and that I've hung on to is that grief and gratitude can coexist. And I feel like that's really important being a caregiver or somebody that does have a feeding tube because it's okay to be sad for a little bit. It's okay to cry about it. It is overwhelming, it's stressful. It's just very important not to live there.
Thank you, Kelsey.
Yeah, I have something I can share as well. I think something I've seen with a lot of families is the clinicians sort of hold a lot of the control of the tube feeds and don't give you that empower you to be an active part of the decision making. And I found that my patients have the best outcome when I truly listen to their perspective and give them space to tell me what's like actually happening at home. So I can't tell you how many times I've had a family tell me, their child's puking excessively, they're losing weight, they don't know what to do. They've tried everything. And we go through the feeding plan and they share like, well, I'm supposed to be doing 5 meals a day, but I only get in like 3.5. And then their child continues to lose weight. So then the team is like adding more volume to it, but mom's thinking, well, I'm not even doing that plan to begin with. And now there's just this big disconnect. And the parent feels like a failure, even though it's not them that's the problem. And so I know it's hard with some teams, they don't give you that space, but there are people that will. And I think it's so important to find a clinician that is going to give you that opportunity to share what's really going on, because so often I'm able to find a way to make the plan, shift the plan a little bit, or just like ask the parent, like, what are you actually doing at home as far, or what do you think your child can actually tolerate? Like, I would rather you give 6 ounces that they keep down than give 8 just for a goal that they're going to puke up all 8 ounces. And just finding a plan that like the child can actually tolerate and the parent feels good about usually results in the child doing so much better from like a weight gain and tolerance perspective. So just know that you are the most important person on the team and your perspective is so important. And if they're not listening, there's going to be someone that will, and it will significantly change your tube feeding journey.
I want to ask just one follow-up question to that, Hillary, and that's what are some of the questions you ask to kind of catapult that conversation into active listening? And I feel like there's some healthcare professionals who have the intent, they just don't have they don't think they have the time, but there's a couple questions that you ask that get you a lot of information. Do you have any of those in your head?
Yeah, instead of telling them this is the plan and what, like, not like, I mean, not what do you think, but like instead of just handing them a plan, I think truly saying like, okay, it's okay if you're not following what I've recommended, but like what is actually working for you at home? Can you walk me through like what the day looks like so that we can find like a path from there rather than a path from the plan I think that you should be following. And also like, are you happy with this? I can't tell you how many times I've had a patient, like they think they have to be on this formula that they're not really loving, but they don't know that they have other options and their child's doing okay, but they are, it's not something that they really like. So just, asking them like, are you happy with what you're giving your child? Or how do you think it's actually working for them? And a lot of times they're like, oh, it's no big deal, it's totally fine. But some are like, oh, I didn't know that I had another option, or oh, I don't know, it's not what I love, but I'm dealing with so much else right now, I don't want to worry about that. And when I'm thinking, well, all the feeding intolerance could probably be improved a little bit if we try to find something that worked better for them. So I don't know if those are the best questions, but I think just like looking at them and giving them space to be as honest as they can be is important.
Oh, I love that. Has anyone ever asked you guys, are you happy with the feeding schedule or how it's going?
I always ask like to all the healthcare providers, like, what would you actually do if this was your kid or if this was you? Because it sometimes feels like healthcare professionals have amazing experience like in school, and obviously they're very empathetic and like they're there for a reason, but like they go home and live their life, and they don't necessarily like live it 24/7 like we do. And so they can give a recommendation that might, if you say like, well, what would you actually do? And then be like, oh, I actually like, yeah, that would suck. So I sort of ask a similar question like to them. And I find that usually gets really good advice. And we've always had really good experiences with that.
Yeah.
I get asked, but that's because I at some point decided to find a team, which you are well within your right to do, that cares about you and wants to work with you and with your kind of goals and plans for the future. And that wasn't always the case. And that's kind of when you feel unheard. And that's when I was still in like scary situations, not getting the right nutrition, being on a nasal tube for way too long, that kind of stuff. And I finally got to a point where I realized that I deserved, like morally as a human being, a care team who cared about me and my health journey as like one thing. And now that I have aligned myself and gotten that care team, and I worked really hard, and I have a lot of privilege in knowing that I have such a great care team. I'm well aware of that. But now I do get asked those questions, and I get a big say in kind of what's going on in the plan, even the type of tube, that kind of stuff. And I'm really grateful for that. But I had to realize that I was allowed to want that and deserving of that. And that was really hard from all like the medical gaslighting, medical trauma I had. And now that I am here, I mean, I recommend it to everyone to realize that you deserve the best and you're allowed to fight for that.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for your time today. I have learned a lot. I can't wait to share this with others. And I truly hope that this has at least made some other parents feel less alone and given some healthcare professionals some insight. So thank you to our guests for being here, for just sharing so honestly and openly about the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think what you guys have taught us today is that tube feeding is not just a medical intervention, but it's truly what happens in your day-to-day, every single day. So my hope is that today's conversation offered understanding and reassurance and maybe even a little bit of hope, no matter what family journey you're on when it comes to tube feeding. So thank you all so much for being here today, and I'm so grateful for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank
Thank
you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.